everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sales Technology Podcast. I'm David Dulany, your host, and I'm joined today by Jeremy Schiff with Salesbot. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You're solving a huge issue that we've had. I feel like for the 20 years that I've been in this industry and beyond, of efficiency in the sales process. How did you get into SalesBot, and what problem are you solving?
Yeah, so my background's in AI. I got a PhD in robotics and applied machine learning at Berkeley many, many years ago. And then one of my previous companies was a personalized restaurant recommendation company, which I sold to OpenTable. And so while I was at OpenTable, just got exposed to a lot of sort of interesting problems around recruiting and things like that. And after I left OpenTable, I was like, well, I have all this experience recommending places. What happens if I recommend people instead? Because there are more people. It's generally a higher value business, so on and so forth. So we actually started out with launching RecruitBot, which was an end-to-end tool for recruiting. And while getting good traction there, we actually found that a lot of our customers were having more challenges with lead gen than they were with placing candidates. And so they were actually using RecruitBot for sales. So we pivoted the company, and now we're focused on SalesBot, which is basically a tool to automate the processes involved with finding and engaging with really great sales leads with a lot less time and effort.
Yeah, that's an evergreen problem, and it seems so time consuming. I mean, if you just look back even 5 years ago, a lot of the time on the sales floor was essentially doing research to try to
Yep.
find people. And so how do you think about solving that problem?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Our approach was different from the start, which it turns out has given us a very large advantage in the market. So there's sort of a couple of major distinctions about our product relative to like other things that are out there that do similar things. So first of all, most other competitors are primarily building their database by crawling their users or the CRM or something like that. We work more like Google. So we actually go and crawl the entire internet and sort of stitch all of the relevant data together. So taking experience data and investment data and revenue data and industry data and demographic data and sort of making that all one central thing. So I don't need 12 pivot tables in Excel to go and find what it is that I'm going and looking for. So we make that a lot easier to search and find. And ultimately that means our database is much bigger. So compared to sort of like the sort of bigger name players, we have two to three times more people in our database. We have about 690 million people in our database, much, much larger than basically anyone else. And also, we are pulling a lot of the contact information in real time. So we don't have stale sort of information. People continue to be very surprised about how much better our contact information data is. And then the sort of third major thing is that we have generative AI that will make a lot of the process a lot easier. So you literally describe your ICP, your ideal customer profile, in natural language, and you give a link to your website, and our system can both automatically generate a search to go and find you tens of thousands of people, which means it'll find the right job titles, the right industry, so on and so forth. Oftentimes we find between 10 and 19 times more leads than the competition. So if you find a lot more leads, that ultimately means you're fishing in ponds other people aren't. So people are a lot more responsive. And similarly, we can go and generate email campaigns and personalize them based on the unique data that we have. And a good chunk of our customers will just go and export that data into some third-party tool and go and do outreach from like an Instantly or an Outreach or a Salesloft. And another percentage of people will actually connect directly using our tool and do outreach that way. And so whether you want to sort of do bulk export and keep the workflows the way you have it, or you want to solve the problem end to end in our tool, both sort of options are available.
And so say someone doesn't have the other tools right now and they sit down, what's like a day in the life of a sales rep where, yesterday they would have spent hours and hours, trying to find all this contact data. What would it look like for them if they were using SalesBot?
Yeah, so literally the workflow would be they go in and there are two boxes that you type in. You type in, I'm looking for, I don't know, heads of marketing at mid-market IT and construction companies in with near or in Texas.
Mhm.
And the system will actually automatically run searches and even will adjust the searches based on the number of results to get you a good number of people. So it'll go and find all the related sort of terms you might want to go and help you find exactly who you want. So to your point, rather than being a search expert and there's all this crazy stuff, even like Boolean search to really hone in on exactly what you want, the AI will just write all of that stuff for you. So now instead of you spending, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes refining or longer refining your search, could take hours if you're looking for sort of a hard to fill role. It's sort of literally in 6 to 8 seconds, you have all of the people that you might want to go engage with. Then you can just sort of review the profiles one by one and go and say, great, these are people I want to reach out to, and add them to a campaign and automatically personalize them in Salesbot. Or you could say, great, I'm going to go and export 10,000 of them into some other tool, and I'm going to start doing very large volume email sending. So whether it's sort of account-based marketing where you need the exact email and phone number of the right person, or sort of you're doing sort of more high volume methods, we support both. And this is important to note that this isn't also just email, this is also phone data. So we have sort of remarkably good phone data because we're working with many different phone vendors at once, which it's really useful. I mean, I actually use it all the time when a customer gets busy and stops responding. Following up by a text to get that deal back on track is a lifesaver. And it's amazing how often just poking at people and being like, hey, I assume you're overwhelmed with email. How can I help? Like by a text can go a really long way as well.
Totally. That's how people communicate now, right?
Yep,
It's text for the quick one. And
for
so what
sure.
you're saying is I could have this running in the background all the way. Again, if I'm in SalesBot, I have the outreach running in the background, and then I can also get a list of the phone numbers of all the people that I've been sending emails to, for example, so I can follow up with them on the phone.
That's exactly right. You can do both. And we also even have social profiles. So if you wanted to follow up on X or you wanted to follow up on LinkedIn via InMail, all of that stuff is sort of easily available to you to go and sort of do it whichever way your market motion is. Everyone has slightly different approaches, but definitely going multi-channel like you're describing has major advantages. And having all that data available in one place just makes it a lot easier than having to use 5 different tools to find it.
It's amazing. And then, so there's all these different industries out there. I'm in sort of the Silicon Valley bubble, so I'm just talking to tech people all day. But
Sure.
what about, uh, rubber stamp industries in Ohio, who you have to talk to the procurement manager, some really like wacky use case?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to be very clear, we're primarily B2B. So there are some B2C use cases that we support. We have to do some custom work for it to help those customers out. But generally, this is B2B. But we have 680 million people in our database. And people are like, wait, aren't there only like 360 million people in the US and only about 180 million white collar workers? Yes. So we have sort of a broad international presence as well. But the easiest thing for me to say is I never know. And so the easiest thing to do is just go in. What's nice is say there's a wacky job title, or like I know that government job titles are often very different than conventional titles, for example. The AI will often be better at sort of doing that translation and guessing those job titles for you than you would ever know unless you're like a really deep domain expert. So I continue to be astounded about how effective we are at finding all sorts of roles. This isn't just like selling to B2B tech. It's like any industry, like cosmetics or biotech or like literally anything and everything. Um, Basically, if you're a white collar worker, you're probably in our system.
It's B2B. Okay. And so how do you set it up like internally? So do you have a sales team? Do you have SDRs, or is it just Jeremy and Iron Man, basically, or whatever, Jarvis, you telling yourself, you're
We're
interfacing with your own. Yeah.
we're probably more leveraged on AI than the typical company would be, not surprisingly, but we're doing sort of all of the above. So we are taking emails. Actually, we both are using SalesBot and we actually will export into other third party tools just because we're always evaluating how our deliverability works relative to others and making sure that we're sort of doing things the right way. And as I said, because we're supporting both ways, we want to make sure that both workflows are well supported for people. So it's actually interesting that we both do our own and we'll use one or two of the other outreach tools in parallel to go and sort of see how things are working. We definitely do a lot of the sort of AI driven personalization and are just reaching out sort of, it depends on the program. Like there are certain niches that we are finding we're doing phenomenally well. Phone and email agencies, for example, we're doing phenomenally well with at the moment. And so we'll run specific campaigns with those sorts of people in much more targeted ways or do more broad campaigns. The other industries like tech, where you would expect that there would be a lot of interest. And then we're also doing similar, like using phone numbers. We're not sort of doing sort of like high level parallel dialing yet, but that's probably a direction that we'll also embrace sooner than later. But we're definitely sort of leveraging, and we're using sort of InMail and because of all of the and even like social messaging, like on Facebook or things like that, if we really need to get a hold of someone. We're basically using all the channels we can, but we probably lean a little heavier on email and phone than anything else.
Yep, it's an omni-channel world, and it's the attention. I mean, people are so distracted these days, and so you have to reach them where they are, right? And I was going to ask you, with your initial customer base, are you seeing some trends? You mentioned phone and email agencies. Are there some companies or some industries that are picking this up and running with it?
Yeah, I think as tools like ours are hitting the market, I think a lot of the strategies are changing, right? The ability to just get delivered to the inbox is getting harder and harder. And so things like deep personalization, so all the messages are different. So it's harder for spam detectors to sort of blanket write off all of your messages can be really helpful. We're definitely seeing a big resurgence in phone. There's a lot more interest in phone now than I was sort of expecting there to be. I mean, phone's always been a cornerstone of sales, but as email has gotten harder, phone has become sort of a bigger deal. And to your point, I think omni-channel is becoming a big thing, right? I'm hearing about people that are pulling different types of information and running advertising to people before they go and run emails or phone numbers at all to try and warm them up. There's all these or they're trying to get people to connect with them on LinkedIn and then are just subjecting them to sort of personalized content for a couple of weeks before they escalate to email, before they escalate to phone. So there's this very clear process that sort of going for the jugular, as it were, as people used to do in sales, of your first message is like, hey, David, I've got this great tool called Salesbot that's just going to save you a ton of time. That doesn't really work anymore. You need to sort of draw out the customer and actually lead with a lot of value before they're even going to give you the time of day to be willing to talk to you. And so there are lots of ways to go and do that, but it's been interesting that we've been seeing that style of selling is working well. But every product's different. So I don't think there is some grand unified theory of the right way to do sales. We're constantly trying to make sure that the tool is flexible enough that is easy to use for whatever use cases people have, while being simple and intuitive for whatever use case people have, right? If you need to be a specialist that takes weeks of training to go and be able to use the tool in the first place, that's not a great situation to be in. And so that's something we've been very focused on from the beginning.
Yeah, you got to make it easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Easy, make it fun. And it's hard. It's hard to build a brand, and to get brand recognition when you're a startup, right? Because you're like, okay, we gotta get some pipeline here. We got to get some sales. And it's like, okay, we also have to build a brand, which might take 5 years, for people to start to recognize
Sure.
the name of our company. So it's a tough balance. There's definitely no silver bullet answer for this. It's just
I agree.
a lot of experimentation. And if somebody has some sales tools already, like some of the ones that you mentioned, but they could layer on Salesbot as well, and or if they don't have any right now, they could potentially just use that for their sales automation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And to 2 points. One, if you're sort of earlier stage, outbound is usually where you need to start because inbound is going to be too expensive. If people haven't heard about you, it's going to cost a lot of money to go and generate it, right? You need to get in front of the right people and even just workshop what your value propositions need to be that are going to resonate with people. So just like generating conversations, the only way to do that is to proactively